Picture this. You're standing inside the Great Pyramid of Giza. Not outside, looking up at it like a tourist. Inside, deep inside, in a chamber carved from solid granite, surrounded by walls that haven't seen sunlight in thousands of years. You're not alone. A researcher hands you a set of headphones. He asks you to just listen. And then you hear it. Not words, not music. Something older than both. A low, resonant hum that seems to come from everywhere at once. From the walls, from the floor, from the stone itself. It moves through your chest like a second heartbeat. That researcher was Dr. John Reed. The year was 1997, and what he recorded inside that chamber would quietly shake the foundations of everything we thought we knew about why the Great Pyramid was built. Let's start with something most people walk right past. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and the only one still standing. Built around 2560 BC, it stood as the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. 4,000 years. Let that sink in for a moment. We've been to the moon and back, we've mapped the human genome, we've built machines that can think. And yet, a group of people with copper tools and wooden sleds built something so precise, so mathematically loaded, that engineers today still can't fully explain it. Here's what I mean. Take the base perimeter of the pyramid, the total distance around all 4 sides. Divide it by twice the height. You get 3.141059. Pi, the mathematical constant that describes every circle, every wave, and every orbit in the known universe. Was that an accident? Mainstream Egyptologists say, yes, a coincidence born from the tools they used. But here's where it gets interesting. The ancient Egyptians didn't have a recorded concept of pi. They had no mathematical text describing it. So either they stumbled upon one of the universe's most fundamental constants by pure luck, or something else was going on. And that's before we even get to the acoustics. Back to Dr. Reed. When he carried his equipment into the king's chamber, that granite room deep in the heart of the pyramid, he wasn't looking for mystical experiences. He was there to do cymatics research. Cymatics is the study of how sound physically shapes matter. Think of sand on a vibrating plate, forming intricate geometric patterns. Reed wanted to see what the pyramid's interior acoustics looked like, visually. What he found instead was something he hadn't planned for. The king's chamber resonates at approximately 111 Hertz. Now, 111 Hertz might sound like a random number. But in 2008, a team of researchers studying prehistoric underground chambers, caves, and tunnels carved by ancient peoples across Europe discovered something remarkable. Almost every single one of them also resonated at or near 111 Hertz. The Hypogeum of Halsaflieni in Malta, Newgrange in Ireland, cave systems in France that contain the oldest known cave paintings in the world, all of them 111 Hertz. These sites are separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years. They were built by cultures that had no known contact with each other, and yet they all converge on the same frequency. Dr. Ian Cook of UCLA led a study in 2008 examining what 111 Hertz does to the human brain. His findings were striking. At that frequency, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for moral reasoning, decision-making, and self-awareness, goes temporarily quiet. Meanwhile, the areas associated with mood, empathy, and emotional processing become significantly more active. In other words, 111 Hertz doesn't just sound a certain way. It changes the way you think. It makes you more open, more emotional, more receptive. Now ask yourself this. Why would ancient builders, people we often dismiss as primitive, why would they independently engineer that effect into their most sacred spaces? Here's something your physics teacher probably never mentioned. Granite, the specific type of stone used in the king's chamber, is piezoelectric. That means when you put mechanical pressure on it, it generates an electric charge. And when you run an electric current through it, it vibrates. The granite in the king's chamber contains high concentrations of quartz crystals. Quartz is one of the most piezoelectric materials on Earth. It's the same reason quartz is used in your watch, your microphone, and your ultrasound machine. Now consider this. The king's chamber sits directly above a series of underground water channels. Moving water creates pressure. Pressure on piezoelectric stone creates vibration. Vibration creates sound and potentially electromagnetic fields. Dr. Carmen Bolter, an Egyptologist from the University of Calgary, has argued for years that the pyramid's location was not chosen arbitrarily. It sits on a geological fault line. The bedrock beneath Giza is laced with quartz-rich granite. The aquifer below it is one of the largest in the region. Is it possible that the pyramid was built precisely here because of what was underneath it? I'm not asking you to believe that. I'm asking you to consider it. Because here's what we know for certain. The builders of the Great Pyramid had access to astronomical knowledge that shouldn't have existed yet. They had engineering precision that we still struggle to replicate. And they chose granite. Specifically granite, not limestone, not sandstone, for the innermost chambers. That choice was deliberate. The question is why? I want to be honest with you here, because this is where a lot of channels lose me. There are serious, credentialed researchers who look at everything I've just told you and say, it's coincidence, pattern recognition. Human beings are wired to find meaning in randomness, and ancient structures are so complex that you can project almost any theory onto them. And they're not wrong to say that. The pi relationship in the pyramid's dimensions could genuinely be an artifact of the construction method. A wheel used to measure distances would naturally produce pi-related ratios. The 111 Hz resonance could be a byproduct of the chamber's dimensions rather than intentional design. The piezoelectric properties of granite are real, but there's no direct evidence the Egyptians knew about them or exploited them. These are fair critiques. Science requires evidence, not just elegance. But here's what the skeptical argument struggles to explain: the consistency, not one coincidence, dozens of them, layered on top of each other across multiple continents, across multiple millennia. At some point, the coincidences start to feel like a pattern, and patterns, in science, are where questions begin. So, I'll leave it to you. Not because I don't have a perspective, I do, but because the most interesting questions are the ones you arrive at yourself. Let's zoom out. The Great Pyramid is not alone. Across the ancient world, from Peru to Cambodia to Turkey, you find the same signatures. Massive stone structures built with impossible precision. Astronomical alignments that required centuries of observation. And acoustic properties that seem deliberately engineered to alter human consciousness. Göbekli Tepe in southeastern Turkey, just a few hundred kilometers from where you might be reading this right now, was built 12,000 years ago. That is 7,000 years before the Great Pyramid. The people who built it were supposedly hunter-gatherers. They had no cities, no agriculture, no written language. And yet, they quarried and transported 10 to 20-ton stone pillars, arranged them in precise astronomical alignments, and then, most mysteriously of all, deliberately buried the entire complex. They covered it up, on purpose, as if they were hiding it or preserving it for someone who would come later. We are that someone. There is a thread running through human history that our official timelines have never fully accounted for. A thread of knowledge, of mathematics, of acoustics, of astronomy that appears and disappears across cultures like a signal that keeps trying to reach us. Maybe the Great Pyramid is not a tomb. Maybe it is not even a monument. Maybe it is a message. And maybe, just maybe, we are finally starting to learn how to read it. The stone doesn't give up its secrets easily, but it does give them up. If there's a mystery you want us to investigate, drop it in the comments below. Subscribe to the Lithic Code. The next code is already waiting.